This week on The Destination Angler.
The most memorable moment that I have is multi, but it always is the same thing. The first time the guy gets it, he makes a great cast. He gets a big fish. He lands the fish. He's got a smile on his face from ear to ear. He's shaking like a leaf. And that's the coolest thing on earth. And I've seen that thousands of times. And it still turns me on. It turns me on more than me catching a big fish.
That was Bill Sherer on guiding on the Border Brule River. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of The Destination Angler, brought to you by Trout Routes, the #1 fishing app, helping you find new trout waters so you spend less time on the road and more time doing what you love, trout fishing. And by Adams Built Fishing Gear, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear, built to last at an affordable price. And by Anglers Coffee, perfecting the coffee experience for the fly fishing community and anglers everywhere with small batch coffee delivered to your doorstep. It's darn near perfect. And by Got Fishing, crafting world-class fly fishing adventures specially designed to your level experience and budget. Up next on the Destination Angler, we are headed to the wilds of northern British Columbia and the vast and remote Spotsylvania wilderness for an off-the-grid adventure of a lifetime. After that, we explore Montana's biggest turnaround story, the Clark Fork of the Columbia River. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode on Trout Disneyland, the magical North Island of New Zealand, with backcountry fly fishing guide and YouTuber Alex Waller tripping on trout. If you're on Instagram, head on over to the Destination Angler podcast and check out some of the pictures I've been posting on some of these amazing fish that Alex has been catching. Well, I have a small favor to ask. If you love the show, would you take just a moment and share it with a couple of your fishing buddies? That would be huge. Thank you so much. And be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch all the Destination Angler podcasts coming your way. And when you do, you'll be entered to win a full year of Trout Routes Pro. This week's winner is Graham from Appleton, Wisconsin. Congrats, Graham, and thank you for listening. All right, so let's hear from Bill on the Border Brule River. All right, folks. So today, our destination is the Border Brule River in northern Wisconsin, and our guest is Bill Sherer, owner of We Tie It Fly Shop in Boulder Junction, Wisconsin. Bill, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Steve. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I love your background too. A couple of bucks up there, your fly tying stuff in the back. You're ready to go, huh?
Oh, yeah. This is the front window of the fly shop. So when you walk through the door, if you look to your right, you see 85 drawers full of my personal fly tying materials.
There you go. Sounds like fun. So, all right. So you folks may be thinking that isn't Boulder Junction the musky capital of the world? And you would be right, but it's also home to some fantastic trout fishing. And that's what we're going to be talking about mostly today. In fact, if you're an outdoorsman, Wisconsin is absolutely loaded with over 15,000 lakes and 17,000 miles of trout streams. There's enough here to keep you busy for a lifetime. And the Border Brule is considered a Class 1 trout stream in the state, and for good reason. It's surrounded by national forest. Public access is outstanding for anglers who want to chase its healthy populations of wild browns and brook trout and relative solitude. Not only does Bill run the fly shop, he's also a recognized authority on trout and musky fly fishing and holds a world line class record for muskie and for walleye and several other saltwater species. He's a former state council chairman of Trout Unlimited Wisconsin and an internationally acclaimed fly designer with flies sold in shops around the world. Super excited to have you, Bill. All right, let's start. I got to start with muskies. So I know you've caught a bunch of muskies, you and your clients. How many muskies have you caught?
I'm 91 short of 7,000.
7,000. Is there a muskie up there you haven't caught? That's got to be all of them.
Oh, no, that's not even scratching the surface.
Really?
I figure that you probably catch one out of every 3 or 4. So somewhere around maybe 30,000 muskies I've interacted with.
Oh, no kidding.
Directly or indirectly.
Yeah. Are some of them your pets? You've named
Oh,
some of these
sure. There are
fish?
some repeats in there. I know I've
Yeah.
caught some 4 or 5 times, but
Oh my
I give
gosh.
them lessons. They challenge me every time we go back. I got to be a little trickier than I was before in order to get them to eat again.
I had a guide tell me that a fish gets 1% smarter every time you catch it.
I'd say it's probably more like about 15 or 20%.
Then they get big and hard to catch. All right. So tell me about that world record muskie. What were you doing and what did you catch it on?
It was late in the year, not super late. It was in the end of October. There was a huge front coming. We could actually see it in the background. I had seen a big fish came after us twice in the same area, so I knew where the fish generally was. And I had a day off with a buddy of mine. I said, we're going to go after her. This storm's coming in. That big fish is going to be eaten right now. So we got out on this deep lake, but not a big lake, which is just about ideal for growing a few big muskies. And got into position, got in the right spot. About the second or third cast, the fish follows me in and came in hard. I mean, I thought it was going to eat. And this is a, 45-pound fish. It's a big fish.
Holy smokes.
And came in hard and veered off at the boat. I threw back at it, came back in. It came back in like 3 or 4 times, but it would not take. I changed flies. I got it to come back again. It just wouldn't take. And I was up on top of a sandbar and there was a drop off right near me, but I wasn't on top of it.
Yeah.
And after about 10 minutes of casting, a smaller fish came in. Not a little fish, but a smaller fish. Sometimes these big fish will tolerate what I call a buddy muskie, another muskie that they're bringing up because they know that they're getting towards the end of their time and they're going to hand off the territory to somebody else. So this buddy muskie comes up and comes after my fly. And the big muskie came back and tried to chase the littler muskie away, telling it, no, don't eat that.
My fly.
No, not my fly. I already know that this thing's fake, and I'm trying
Oh,
to teach
okay.
you
Protected him.
what
Yeah.
not to do. And the big one disappeared after that, never saw it again. The little one, every time I would start in, it came in hard. Every time I tried to start into a figure eight at the boat, it would disappear. It'd turn around, start swimming away. I'd throw the fly out in front of it. It would come back again and again and again. It kept doing the same thing. And I'm working this fish for 20 minutes. And
Yeah.
every time I go into a figure eight, it loses interest. And I'm turning the fly away from the boat. I'm doing everything I should, and it's just not eating. And at some point during this whole ordeal, I was in the stern of the boat anyway. At some point, I had the rod tip out the back end of the boat, and I turned the rod instead of turning the rod, I'm left-handed, so I make the figure eight. I started to the right.
Yeah.
And I was at the back of the boat. I started the figure eight to the left. The fish came in and just slammed.
He likes right-handed fishermen.
I just opened my hand. I let that fish swim about 5 feet, put the rod tip down in the water and crossed her eyes. I knew I had
Yeah.
it stuck right there. You can always tell. When you stick them right, you can tell because they just stop and practically
Yeah.
roll over for a second. And then the fight was on. I knew I was using light tippet. I was using 12-pound test. And there was a lot of logs underneath of us down on the bottom of this bay that we were in. So I just kind of held her as tight as I dared and kept working her and working her. Had my buddy on the landing net. I said, okay, time I bring this fish by the boat, get that net in her face. And so it worked. We got it in. And after we got the fish landed and I start to remove the hook, I found out why it lost interest so much. It only had one eye. It didn't
Oh, no
have an
kidding.
eye on the left side of its face. So every time I made that turn with the rod from the right to the left, it lost vision.
Huh.
So it had an old scar on its gill plate that came up through its eye, and the skin had grown over the eye. So there was no chance that that fish could see out of that
Wow.
side. I wish
That's
I would have
amazing.
taken a picture of it. I didn't think about it at the time. I mean, we knew that line class was open. There was nobody
Yeah.
had a fish in that line class. It was a 45-inch fish. It was 25 pounds, so it wasn't a baby.
Right.
48-inch fish, 25 pounds, but it wasn't the big one that I was after.
Oh, can you imagine? Have you seen that guy again? What do you think?
No, nobody's ever seen that fish again. There was 5 of us guides who knew about that fish. And after that winter, nobody ever saw it again.
Wow. That's fascinating. That's a great story. So let's talk about the state of Wisconsin. You know, we had to talk about musky fishing if we're up in northern Wisconsin, right? Especially with you. You're an expert. But what is it about northern Wisconsin that maybe my trout angling, listeners aren't aware of?
Well, let me talk a little bit about geography first. As we know, Wisconsin is geologically really unique. And the area that I live in is known as the Northern Highlands. At one point in history, it was the foothills to the mountains that are between me and Lake Superior. Lake Superior is only about 45 miles away. So, this Northern Highland area was a big plateau, still is.
Yeah.
And when the glaciers came through, chopped all the tops off of the mountains to the north, gouged out all these small kettle-style lakes that we have around here, that's what gave us this unique topography. So I sit at the top of the hill. Just north of me is 1,800 feet of elevation, right on the state line. That's only 6 miles away.
You're at 1,800 feet up there.
Yeah, just about. We're at 17, or rather 1685, I think, right here in town. But just north of Highway B is 1,800. So it goes up quickly from here. So I literally live at the top of the hill. The high lake wasn't named by 2 loggers smoking weed,
There's a reason.
It is at the top of the watershed for the Manitwish River. The Manitwish becomes the North Fork of the Flambeau. So the 2 major rivers leading off of this plateau, the Wisconsin and the Flambeau, both start very close to me. The Manitwish runs right out my backyard. There's a little strip of state land between me and it. That's it. So we're uniquely positioned in the state. North of Minocqua, we're straight up the middle of the state. To the east is the better cold water streams. To the west is the better warm water streams. And to the north is the UP and all of the wilderness that's associated with that.
The Michigan UP, yep.
So the Vilas County, the county that I'm in, is the headwaters of the Brule River, of the Border Brule. And so on the far end of the county, where Brule Creek starts and Elvoy Creek starts, those are the 2 main cold water influxes to the upper portions of the Brule River.
Gotcha.
And one of the things that a lot of people don't think about is that it's not just the Brule there. There's the Pine, the Popple, the Peshtigo, and the Border Brule. Those 4 rivers make up the major watersheds that flow east to Lake Michigan. All the water north of me flows north to Lake Superior, and all the water coming off of the plateau flows into the Mississippi.
Yeah.
So I am literally at the top of the hill.
Oh, that's fantastic. If you water your garden, who knows which lake it's going to end up
Well,
in?
if you're a lucky snowflake, you get to the ocean faster if you land on the Lake Superior side.
There you go. So you've got some really unique geography. And how would you rate the trout fishing in northern Wisconsin? What's it like up there?
Well, it's unique because it's long run freestone streams for the most part. There's some spring creeks, but very few. Right around Boulder, we've got about 8 or 10 spring ponds, and all the spring creeks flow into a warm water lake. So those spring pond populations are pretty isolated.
Yeah.
They can't get out and intermingle with anybody else. So those are unique brook trout populations. There aren't any brown trout that are stocked, for that matter. There aren't any brook trout that are stocked up here either. Everything up here is a wild fish.
That's awesome.
With the exception of what we call the put and take lakes. The DNR has about a dozen or so lakes that they stock with browns or brook trout or rainbows, depending on which species that particular lake happens to do best with. And those lakes are stocked. DNR puts them out. Anglers put them in, take them out. And they call those lakes two-story lakes. They're deep enough and small enough that in the upper, maybe 12 feet or so of that water column is warm water fish, bass and bluegills primarily. And then the trout live in the deeper, colder water below that. But in the spring and in the fall, when the warm water fish pretty much quit biting and the water is cooled off, the trout come up to the surface.
Oh, no kidding. I've not heard of that.
So yeah, those fisheries, they're not very good in the summer months when the fish are real deep, but in the spring and the fall, they're excellent.
Okay. Hey, anglers. If you've been listening to the podcast, you already know Trout Routes has mapped and classified over 50,000 trout streams covering the entire lower 48, including 350,000 hand-curated public access points marked and ready for you to explore. But I bet you didn't know about a brand new feature called Trout Lakes. With a flip of a filter, Trout Routes Pro users can see over 12,000 fishable alpine lakes in the lower 48. You can turn this layer on in the filters menu to open up a whole new set of trout fishing opportunities. You know, there's nothing more exciting than finding that new trout stream, lake, or access point. I'm a huge fan of Trout Routes because they make it so easy. Say goodbye to stumbling around country roads looking for your next spot. Because Trout Routes provides every detail you need for each stream or lake, including public and private bridges, stream flows, trail access, where to park, camping opportunities, boat ramps, and a new feature to calculate actual river miles. How cool is that? No service, no problem. You can save maps for offline use. With Trout Routes, I've found dozens of new streams and access points I never would have known about. So what are you waiting for? Sign up for Trout Routes today on your Apple or Android phone. Are you an avid angler in search of top-notch fly fishing gear that's easy on the wallet? Well, look no further than Adams Built Fishing Gear. Adams Built is the ultimate choice for anglers who prioritize quality, affordability, and style. Established in 2014, Adams Built has been the trusted companion for thousands of anglers, creating unforgettable moments on the water. Seasoned pros and beginners alike will love their lineup of lightweight and durable waders and wading boots, high-quality nets and fly rod starter kits, and meticulously designed fly boxes and outerwear. When I first heard about Adams Built, I have to admit I was a bit skeptical. Having run through many pairs of waders over the years, I wondered about their guarantee. So get this, folks, all Adams Built branded products are guaranteed to last, and Adams Built waders carry a lifetime repair or replace guarantee. You only pay shipping. Hard to beat that. So why not make Adams Built Fishing Gear your go-to choice? Check them out at a dealer near you or at adamsbuiltfishing.com. That's Adam Built Fishing, the trusted source for quality fly fishing gear. And what about, so I think of even in northern Michigan, you know, where I'm used to fishing, and I've been to northern Wisconsin. I used to go there as a kid. I think of lots of tight cover, maybe some difficult casting, but what's it like on the Pine and some of these other rivers you named? Can you get in there and move around a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the headwaters areas, yes, they're going to be small and tight.
Yeah.
And, you know, if you're fishing more than 30 feet away, you're probably around the corner. but
yeah.
And usually I'll take out an 8.5 foot 4-weight for the first couple of days of the season with me and go into one of these small streams that I ought to be using about a 6.5 or 7 foot rod in, just to tune up on my roll casting and to get the feel back for it. And if I can catch, a 10 or 12-inch brookie in one of those streams, I know I'm doing real good. And it usually takes me a couple of hours before I finally get to that point where I can make a good delivery with a roll cast when you've got so much brush all around.
I got you.
One of the things about all of these fisheries is that the fish tend to be rather migratory. So these rivers are relatively shallow, fairly low gradient, not real big waterfalls or anything like that. They do have rapids and riffles throughout all of them. And they're separated. The rapids and riffles are usually separated by several hundred yards or more of flat water. So it's, 200 yards of riffle, 400 yards or more of maybe a mile of flat water, and then another big long riffle, and then another flat, and so on. So that's kind of the way the geography sets up for these rivers. And in those slow portions, there are some deeper holes. In the summer months, those flat waters tend to get too warm. So the fish migrate farther and farther upstream. And it's kind of nature's plan. As the water warms up in the spring, the fish want to move back upstream. So in the beginning of the season, if you're fishing way in the upstream portions of the stream, you're not going to find very many large fish. We have radio telemetry studies on the Border Brule in particular that shows we've got, 15 to 24-inch brooks and browns that are migrating 20 to 30 miles one way every year.
Wow, no kidding.
In order to find deep enough water to overwinter in. So they went all the way down to the walleye water. The walleyes dropped back to the next reservoir or whatever the deeper hole is, 10 miles downstream from them. And everybody slowly moves upstream as the summer warms up. So by the middle of August, all of these big fish that were downstream earlier in the year are up in or near their tributary streams where they were born. So nature's plan was, while they're in their healthiest, to nudge them closer and closer to their spawning sites. So when it comes time to spawn in the end of September, these fish are at their prime.
Yeah, super interesting. So I think of in the summertime that those fish are going to head for deeper water, but you're saying they're going upstream where the water.
They got to find colder water.
So it's colder upstream because these are freestones.
Higher up the hill, we get cooler nights. The higher up you go.
Gotcha. And these are freestone streams, not spring creeks.
That's right. And many of the streams that are flowing into them might be a spring creek, and that's where the fish will spawn. So they'll stage either near the mouth of those streams or within 100 yards or so of those small streams. If you picked up a topo map and you looked at it and you saw a place in maybe not all the way in the headwaters, but near the headwaters.
Yeah.
And there's 3 streams coming in within a quarter of a mile or a half a mile each other, which is pretty typical. Fish that, because that's going to have a bigger concentration of fish.
Yeah, super interesting. Is it super rocky up that way?
It can be. The Border Brule is pretty much a gravel stream.
Gravel, not sand.
Not much sand. There are a couple of stretches where there's some sand in them, but for the most part, it's a gravelly, smaller boulder stream. It doesn't have any big waterfalls or ripples. It's one of the things that attracts so many people. It's relatively easy to wade. Most of the water is going to be thigh deep or less.
Oh, nice. And what kind of CFS do you have there?
It's normal is probably going to be about 190.
Okay.
So it's, you're talking about a stream that's 45 feet wide, in the ripples that's going to be knee deep.
Sounds great.
Yeah, it's perfect wading water.
It sounds really good.
And they're wooded. Don't expect there to be, wide open casting lanes everywhere that you can make a 90-foot cast on. That ain't going to happen.
You probably don't need to either, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Hey, anglers. You've heard me talking about Angler's Coffee for quite some time now. And I have a question for you. Have you tasted it yet? Well, if you have, then you know what I'm talking about. It's darn good coffee, isn't it? Hey, if you're like me, tasting's believing. And believe me, this coffee tastes great. My wife and I are hooked on it. Angler's Coffee offers an impressive spectrum of flavor profiles, so there's something for everyone. You know, when you're spending a day on the water, you need a great cup of coffee to carry you through, like the Coachman's Blend. Named after the famous Royal Coachman, you'll love the design of the bag as much as the coffee. This blend of medium and dark roasted coffee from Central and South America produces a flavorful and smooth cup with notes of chocolate and baking spices and a smooth finish. Order some today and save 10% with a custom subscription like I did. You pick the coffee blends you want, and they're delivered right to your doorstep. And if you're not 100% satisfied, they'll give you your money back, no questions asked. No kidding. A percentage of each sale goes to some great nonprofit organizations in the fly fishing community. So put a smile on your face, just like I did, and give it a cast. That's Angler's Coffee. Tasting's believing. With so much information out there, it can get darn right confusing and even overwhelming to find the right fishing adventure. Sorting through all the options and fees can be quite the headache. Well, not anymore. I'm super excited to introduce Got Fishing. Got Fishing is a boutique booking agency for world-class fishing adventures around the world. They ensure that you are on the exact fishing trip that meets your skill level, budget, and desired experience. Whether you're a seasoned angler or new to the sport, Got Fishing's personalized service will help you decide which adventure is the best fit for you, your group, or even your business. Worried about fees? Worry no more. With Got Fishing, you won't pay anything extra because their services are entirely free for you. You see, Got Fishing exclusively partners with highly reputable outfitters who gladly compensate them for their services, ensuring a win-win situation. Explore the range of fishing adventures and learn more about the services Got Fishing provides at gotfishing.com. That's www.gotfishing.com. And check them out on Instagram, too. So the Border Brule is a special river up there, I know, because you and I talked before the show, and I asked, what would you be excited to talk about? And you said the Border Brule. And why is that? What makes that river kind of stand out compared to the other ones up there?
Well, in the headwaters on the Brule Creek and the Elboy Creeks, there's a 2.8-mile stretch of rehab that's really great. And the
Rehab.
Brule Creek and the Elboy Creek put in all the cold water into the upper portions of the Border Brule. So a lot of the spawning fish are going to move there.
Gotcha. What else? What else, Matt? I mean, it's probably a super pretty river, I'm guessing.
Oh, it's gorgeous. It's easy to float. It's got great access.
Yeah.
If you're on foot, walk to the end of the trail and then walk 10 more minutes. And nobody has fished that all year.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, if I pull into a spot and there's a car there, there's only, 18 other spots I can go that there's not going to be a car at.
Oh, no kidding. So relatively uncrowded.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course, during the major holidays, you're going to find fish on it. There's one float trip that I like to take towards, end of June and early July. I can get on the water and I'll get brook trout first. And then by the time we go a mile, we're into some pretty decent brown trout water. In another mile and a half down from that, we're catching some walleyes and smallmouths and maybe a big pike or a muskie by the time we end the float, another 3 miles downstream. So in a 6-mile stretch, I can go from trout to muskies. That's pretty special. There's not many places like that.
So you've got muskie in the Border Brule.
Yeah, down closer to the lower stretches of it, absolutely.
Okay.
When the trout water starts to peter out, then you'll start to see those warm water fish. And of course, with our warming climate that we've had in recent years, we see those fish moving a little bit farther upstream. But there are enough tributaries on the Border Brule, cold water tributaries, that it keeps the water cool in those areas, which might be a block for those fish.
Where is the quality trout water? Can you give us some direction on that?
Well, from the headwaters all the way down to there's an old logging dam down there. Golly, I can't remember the name. Below the town of Pentoga.
Pentoga.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, another, I mean, we're talking another 8 miles or so downstream from there. It's still good trout water, especially in
pretty
the
good.
spring, because all those, so many fish move way down into that lower section, and they don't start moving up until the water starts warming up in the spring. This year, with the mild winter that we've got, we're going to see those fish move sooner than what they
Earlier.
normally do.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, when does that migration start? It starts in the
Well,
spring
last
then.
year it didn't start until almost Memorial Day.
Oh, really?
Well, we had record snowfall here last winter, not this winter, but
Last winter.
winter before, and it all melted in a week. So we had a huge flush of water go down that was really cold. It kept the river cold for several weeks longer than it usually does.
That's super interesting. Okay, so describe, like the cover that trout have available to them. You said it can be rocky. Is there a lot of wood in the water like you get over in Michigan, maybe, or what's
Yeah,
it
there's
like?
there's plenty of wood in the water. In the riffle areas where the fish like to hang out, you're going to have wood, you're going to have rocks, you're going to have overhanging tag alders and things like that. There's some places where there's cold water seeps that come in, and a big brown or a big brook trout will plaster themselves right up against the bank in 6 inches of water because
That's
that
cool.
water's colder. And they'll just sit in that seep until, early in the morning or late in the evening,
Yeah, that's cool.
and then they'll move out and feed from there. But the hatches on the Brule are just incredible.
Oh, is that right? Let's talk about that. Tell me about the hatches.
We can fish the Henriksen hatch some years through the middle of May, which is unreal.
Yeah, really.
Mother's Day caddis hatch has been super strong for the last 3 or 4 years. The sulfurs have been so, kind of a long, drawn-out hatch these days, not a real big blanket hatch. The brown drakes are to die for.
Oh, really? How
Yeah.
long does that hatch last?
That'll last about 10 days, and they come right in front of the hexes.
Okay, you've got hex.
Most of these rivers are not real good hex water.
Yeah,
Because
sounds a little rocky.
there just isn't enough of that softer substrate for the hex nibs to live in. There's a few places where there are hexes, but the brown drake would be the better hatch. But there's probably 40 different subspecies of caddisflies that come off on that thing all season.
Ah,
I mean,
no kidding.
we were fishing caddisflies last year at the end of the season in the middle of October.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
Now, the
When?
Border Brule is not open in the end of October because it's on the border. The Michigan season ends September 30th,
Ah,
and it closes September 30th. You can fish the Wisconsin tributaries going into the Border Brule, but you can't fish the main river.
what if I just wait halfway out?
That
Thinking
doesn't
about
count because your Wisconsin license is good bank to bank.
Okay, and a Michigan license is good bank to bank too. Is
That's
that right?
correct. Now,
Okay, it's
Michigan
interesting.
season starts a week earlier. So the Brule benefits from that. We get to start our trout season the last Saturday in April instead of the first Saturday in May, but only on the main stem river. You can't fish the Wisconsin tributaries before that.
When does your brown drake hatch typically come off?
Usually about the middle of June.
Okay, interesting. And then hex,
Hex usually third week of June.
third week of June, and that lasts for how long?
Well, on the Border Brule, it's not going to last long. It's going to be maybe a week or 10 days at the most.
Okay, and you get Hendrickson start in April.
Henriksen's will start some years in April. I would expect them to start in April this year.
Okay, what's your favorite Hendrickson pattern? You got a local tie up there?
Yeah, I've got a couple that I use. I like a real nice big bushy one. I actually fish more wet flies than I do dry flies these
Really?
days. Anyway, yeah, I'm just an old fashioned guy that
That's all
loves
right.
wet flies because I like to catch bigger fish.
I keep running into you guys. I just did a show on the White River and with Davey Watton was his name. And he loves wet fly fishing for those big hogs they got down there on the White River.
Well,
And
yeah,
it's
there's a
like,
lot of those fish that, they've learned that, if you go up towards the top, you get stung too often.
yeah, right.
So they eat the stuff, yeah, they eat the stuff down below.
What's your setup for wet flies? How do you fish them?
Oh, usually I just swing one fly at a time. Occasionally I'll put on two, but most of the time it's just one, primarily because of the kind of water that we have. I'll work a wet fly almost like an old-fashioned streamer. I'll let it roll and slide and glide, and then I'll swim it back up. I'll mend it up underneath the tag alders. I'll tease the fish until they just can't stand it anymore and they gotta eat it.
Yeah.
And we'll fish a carry special. We'll fish some of my bigger, larger wets. I'm not afraid to fish, a size 6 wet fly.
Oh yeah. Okay. When do you, do you like to fish wet flies when there's an emergence and they're not quite busting out on the surface or the trout aren't quite taking
I'll
off?
fish a wet
When?
fly anytime.
Anytime, really? Say more
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah. Well, those bugs, if they're emerging, the bugs are swimming up through the water column. So if I use a license ring lift, for instance,
So what is that?
so that's where you let the fly swing, and as it's swinging through the current, you give it a couple of little mends, what we call a check mend. And what that means is it checks the speed. It doesn't keep going faster. There's a lot of times when a fish is watching the fly, but it's going a little too fast for them and they know they can't catch it. You
Yeah.
throw a check in there and that fly pauses for an instant, he's lunch.
Boom. Yeah.
And then at the end of the swing, if you don't get anything, drop the rod tip all the way down to the water, hold it there for a couple of seconds, slowly lift it up to about eye level, and then drop the rod tip very quickly and get ready to set the hook because you're probably going to have a fish on it.
That sounds like cheating. That sounds really good.
That's the license ring lift.
If you ever stood there with your fly, 10 feet hanging in water, talking to your buddy, all of a sudden, bam, you got a
Oh
fish.
yeah. Yeah, I'll go out fishing with some of my friends and I won't fish in front of them because it's not fair.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Okay. If your friends are listening, Bill still loves you. So what is it? What is a good day up there? I mean, average day, average anglers that you take out. How well can you do?
Average day, average angler, you ought to be able to get a couple dozen brook trout. And if it's a cloudy day and you got a good hatch, you might run into one of those, 3 pound to 8 pound browns that are in there.
Hello.
It's
That'll
not
wake
a
you up.
big number of brown trout in the river,
Yeah.
but they're large fish.
Yeah.
The biggest I've seen is 30 inches. I mean,
Oh, really?
yeah, we're
Okay.
talking big fish.
You ever follow the biologists around when they're shocking just to see what's really in those holes?
They haven't shocked these things in ages.
Really?
There's very few holes.
Huh.
We don't have holes. It's just, miles and miles of riffle and flats. There's a couple of old logging dams that created holes that are still kind of left over, but
Yeah.
there's not a lot of deep water. A deep hole on the Border Brule is going to be 4 feet deep, 5 feet deep.
Huh.
That's why they swim downstream so far to overwinter.
Yeah.
Because those big fish can't make it through the winter in those shallow areas.
So where are those big guys hanging out? Where are you going to find a big trout like that? Under a bank or what?
Under a bank, under a brush pile, a tight corner that's a little bit deeper, that's got a lot of tag alders in it. You better just make up your mind that you're going to fish the tags. Because if you want to get those big fish out of there, you're going to have to put it in their face.
Yeah.
A lot of the supplies that I'll fish an old style, keel style zonker.
Oh.
In either black or olive. And the keel style, the hook point rides up.
Yeah, right. Keel flies, sure.
Yeah, so you can poke that underneath the branches a little bit more. I fish an intermediate tip line a lot. And then I'll just put on like 3 or 4 feet of 8 or 10 pound test tippet.
Right. Intermediate sinking?
Yeah.
Really? Okay, so you're streamer fishing intermediate tip to keep it down.
I might be wet fly fishing like that too.
Oh, really?
Sure.
Okay.
I want to get those wets down into those deeper spots. And again, we're not talking about lots of depth. We're just talking about getting it back in the branches far enough to get that fish to take a swipe at it.
Super interesting. What's your personal best?
32 inches.
Brown?
Brown, yeah. My best brook trout was 22.
Holy smokes,
We
really?
had our biggest one last year was 19. I had a guy break one off that I'm pretty sure was
Who knows?
24.
Tell me about that. How big was that brown? 30 what?
The 32-inch brown, I was fishing with a friend. He had macular degeneration. It was a hex hatch. I knew where the hexes were going to come off.
Yeah.
We went there one evening right at dusk. It was just about dark, and there's a little opening, maybe 10 feet wide in the tags. I get him out on the edge of the stream. He couldn't walk too far without falling over or something because he couldn't see anything.
Poor guy.
And there was two nice fish rising right out in front of him, maybe 15 feet away.
And this is at nighttime, right?
It was just about dark, not quite dark.
Okay.
And I got him set up there, and he's working these two fish. And he says, why don't you fish too? I said, well, I'll walk upstream and see what I see. Well, I walked maybe 50 feet upstream, and there was a toilet flusher. That's a big fish, and it was coming up pretty steady. And I knew that I was on the deep side of the bank. I couldn't step in the water very far, or I was going to go, top of my boots. I was going to go 4 feet up. And I'd scare everything at that point. So I stuck out, and of course I'm 6'6". And
are you? Okay.
Yeah, and I got a 7.5-foot wingspan, so I can reach out there pretty far.
Okay.
So I stick my nose out there. I see the rise form, and he's a couple of feet off the tag alders, and that's it. So, and it's getting darker now, so it's harder to see. First cast, I throw up above him, let it float down through, nothing. And he rises again. I didn't scare him. So I threw up again, and I threw it maybe another 6 inches closer to the tags, nothing. And he rose again. He's giving me the fin at that point. So I said, well, okay, do or die. This is either going to work or it's not. And I threw a fly as close as I dared to the tags, and he took it.
He did, really. Yep. It was a hex dry?
Yeah, hex dry.
Okay.
And it was 40 minutes later when I got that fish's nose up off the bottom.
Seriously?
And landed him. Yeah.
What tip were you using? Do you remember?
I think I was on 3X.
3.
It was either 2X. It had to be 3X because I was using my 3-weight. I couldn't.
A 3-weight.
I couldn't raise him too much. Well, Gary Loomis built it for me, so it's a little different. He built me the blank. I built the rod.
Nice guy, huh?
Yeah.
How about that?
He's a buddy.
What's your most memorable client moment?
Oh, geez, I've had so many. I mean, I've been playing this game I've owned a shop for 33 years.
Have you?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's just so many times that the most memorable moment that I have is multi, but it always is the same thing. The first time the guy gets it, he makes a great cast. He gets a big fish. He lands the fish. He's got a smile on his face from ear to ear. He's shaking like a leaf. And, that's the coolest thing on earth. I've seen that thousands of times. And it still turns me on. It turns me on more than me catching a big fish. I don't need to catch another giant fish. That's cool. But if I can take somebody out there and I can give them the education that they need to be able to land that big fish, that's awesome.
That's really cool, Bill. I love that. I've had that happen a couple of times. Not as many as you, because I'm not a guide, but I've taken a lot of people fishing, and to see that light bulb go on, like they're in a hatch and they're in a bend in the river, and it's just nonstop, and they're just lighting it up.
I had two guys last spring. We walk into a spot, and a little BWO hatch starts coming off, and fizzled out. And there was just a couple of little brookies that were rising, nothing big. And then all of a sudden the sulfurs came up, and it was just like, the hatchery truck was right upstream and dumping fish in. And I mean, fish were rising everywhere. These two guys stood in the same spot for 2.5 hours and caught fish.
Really?
Yeah, they didn't catch anything huge. And the biggest fish was maybe a 14-inch brown, and one guy had a 12-inch brookie. But I mean, they had a ball.
Yeah, you don't want to leave a hatch to find a hatch.
I mean, you don't get hatches like that every day.
Right.
So when you get a chance to stand there and watch a couple of guys just learning how to make the drift right, learning how to put the cast above the fish without lining them and hooking the fly in and making everything right, that's just so cool. And when they had a tough fish that they had to rest that fish for a couple of minutes, after some time, they learned how to do that. Those are all great lessons for everybody.
Wonderful moments. Yeah, you will hook an angler for life if you give them a moment like that. That's for sure.
Oh yeah,
right.
And it doesn't matter if it's a muskie, a bass, a trout. It doesn't matter what species of fish it is. It's them having that opportunity to get into that kind of fishing, because that doesn't just come along every day when you can get to fish a great hatch.
Yeah, exactly. Now, do you have like the mayfly hatches maybe just last a short period of time, but do you have, like caddis hatches that last all afternoon, or do you have some longer?
Yeah, and they won't be a big blanket hatch. It'll just be a few bugs coming up here and there. But, if you start watching the rise forms, you can pick every one of those fish.
Oh, no kidding. Now, do you just kind of prospect with a little caddis fly sometimes when you know that they're sort of coming off sporadically all afternoon?
Yeah, I fish downstream a lot with the wet flies.
Yeah.
And I've got a couple of Gary LaFontaine was a real good friend of mine.
Oh.
I've taken the LaFontaine sparkle pupa and I've kind of modified it for our uses up here. And whether it's bluegills or brook trout, that's almost a guarantee. If there's a fish in the water, they're going to eat it. So, if I see a fish rise on the far bank, I have the guy put the fly 5 feet above that thing or 10 feet above it, just let him drift it down to it, give it a little lift. That fish is going to go for it.
And this is a caddis fly pattern?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. What's it called?
Well, it's a LaFontaine sparkle pupa.
Okay.
But like I said, I've modified that fly to be a little different than what Gary originally tied it at.
Yeah, super interesting. What's the funniest thing a client has ever said to you?
Let's see. One time I had a guy who owns a winery out in California. He comes every summer, and about 3 casts in, he catches a 42-inch muskie. He's just grinning like crazy, and he says, "Thank you, sir. Can I have another one right away, please?"
Yeah, that was easy. Where's the next? I want a 45-incher now, right?
Right. I had a gentleman one time, and he brought his son and his nephew, and they were both teenagers, 15 years old or so. And there was a pool that I really wanted the guy to fish. He's a very good trout fisherman. And I knew that there was several really nice browns and a couple of big brook trout in that pool. But I didn't want to, just put the boys off and leave them do nothing. So I gave them a couple of wet flies and I set them up in a run. And I said to him, I said, okay, cast it out, let it drift all the way down, lift the rod tip, drop it, and then get ready to set the hook. And before we turned around and started walking away, one of the boys says, "Wow, that really works." I said, "Well, I didn't tell you to do it just to waste your time."
Yeah, I've done this a little bit. You might listen, you might learn something. Oh my gosh. Do you guys run into wildlife up there when you're
Oh,
fishing?
yeah. Bears,
you see?
deer, bobcats.
Yeah, have you had any interesting encounters with wildlife?
Yeah, I've had some interesting bear encounters. Usually, once they figure out what you are, they go the other direction.
Okay.
I used to, when I was younger, I used to float the Border Brule at night with some friends. And we all had one man, these little inflatable pontoon rafts.
Oh, cool.
And we would start out, one guy would start out and 10 minutes later, the next guy would start. And see, we'd give him about 10 or 12 minutes between each one. And if you caught it, the first guy, if he caught a big fish, he'd pull over, wait for the next two guys to go by, and we just hopscotch our way all the way
Yeah.
to the
Sounds
river.
great. Yeah.
And it was my turn. I usually took the back, as the last boat because I was going to catch fish. I knew that. So it was my turn. I was in the front, come around a corner, and it's pitch black. You can see the stars overhead. That's about it. River's about 45 feet wide or so, 40 feet wide. Maybe it goes down to 25 feet wide on some of the corners. And come around a corner on this flat, and there's a big rock in the middle of the river. I'm like, there's no big rocks in the middle of the river here. And I can feel the bottom with my feet. So it's only 2 feet deep or so.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the rock picks up its head. It's a big bear.
Oh no.
And then I'm about maybe 50 feet from it. And
5-0?
I'm cranking back on the oars as hard as I can.
Yeah.
And the bear looks up at me and I yell, "Bear!" And about the same time I yell bear, the bear realizes I'm a human. It takes off running through the woods, and you can hear it crashing through the woods.
Yeah, that's kind of
We
cool.
were in an area that had, like a cabin every half a mile or so.
Yeah.
And every cabin that bear ran by, you could hear the dogs barking for about 3 miles down the river.
That's great. That bear's running right through the little stretch of cabins there. That's fantastic. Wow. Do you see many bears? I mean, is it common to see a bear up there?
Oh yeah, they're pretty common. I live practically right in downtown Boulder Junction. I'm 2 blocks off of downtown, but I own a pretty good sized piece of property here, and every bit of wildlife that goes from the north side of town to the south side of the town has to come through my yard. I've got a big bear that comes in and terrorizes my feeders every spring.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my wife calls him Victor because he's got a big white V on his chest.
Huh.
He can reach up 8 foot and grab a feeder. So I've got my feeders way up in the air.
Well, yeah, what's the answer to that one? You just put him up higher, or
Yeah, put him up higher. He's too big to climb a tree, so he won't climb up and grab the cable.
Yeah.
And we have bobcats and
do you?
Everything that comes through my yard all the time. 2 springs ago, we had a female in spring. It was March, early March. Had a female come in, and we've got lots of squirrels and turkeys and everything around. Kind of terrorized the squirrels for a while. 2 days later, she comes back with a young male, a kitten, leaves Junior off and disappears. And she's going out catting around. And this looked like a good place for Junior to learn how to catch some food.
Yeah. Oh, really? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that'd be kind of fun to watch. How'd Junior do? Did he catch something?
He stuck around for about 4 or 5 days, and then he went up the road about another 2 blocks to the restaurant across the street, and the headwaters they were putting food out for him, so he hung around there for another couple of weeks, and then as it started to warm up and more people started showing up, he disappeared.
Sounds pretty remote up there.
We've got a real good population of albino deer here. I just had a 12-point albino buck in the backyard a couple of days ago.
Albino, really?
Yeah.
Huh. It sounds pretty remote up there.
Oh, it is. I mean, Boulder Junction has a resident population of about 650 people.
Okay, that's cool.
And we're about 25 minutes north of Minocqua. We're 6 minutes from the UP, and the UP trout fishing is something we don't disregard by any means. You really want to get remote, you go into the UP.
Interesting. Yeah, I think the UP is a real hidden gem.
Oh, the UP is a gem. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, it's hard to get people to even want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I've done one show up there. How are your mosquitoes?
Last year they were real healthy with all that snow that we had. Filled up all the wetlands for about half the season. This year, I don't think it's going to be a problem because we got no water and we have no snow. I mean, we got 2.5, 3 inches of snow last night. We had nothing before that. So we're not going to have any runoff this year. We're going to be in the 40s by Wednesday. All this snow is going to melt. The good news there is that it's going to go into the ground, and we need it badly because we're in a drought.
Interesting.
So we'll probably get too warm for trout fishing by the time we get into the middle of July or so again this year.
Yeah.
We just shut it off then. We go bass fishing
Oh, you
instead.
do. So you can't go up into those feeder creeks, or is it just too tight to cast up there?
It's tight, but if the fish moved up into there and they're all crowded and they're all trying to find food to stay alive, I
No,
really
leave them
don't
alone.
want to pick on them.
Yeah.
And if I'm guiding in one of those streams, chances are the person that I'm guiding is not going to have the casting experience that I've got. I've got a few clients that I'll take up into those places, but not very many, just because it does take a lot of skill to cast in a stream that's 10 or 12 feet wide, and
Yeah.
you only got 3 feet down the middle that you can actually cast in, and there's still tag alders growing out of it.
Yeah, that would be a challenge. Probably be a frustrating day for
Yeah, I'm in charge of our local TU chapter brushing committee. So we're working on two streams in particular in Vilas County that are both brook trout streams, and we're brushing those. And every year we do another couple hundred yards.
What's that mean, Bill? Brushing.
Oh well, so on streams that Trout Unlimited has done uh, habitat projects on in the past,
Yeah.
we have. I call up the local fish manager. I say, "Hey, we want to go in and do some remediation." That means that we can cut any brush that's hanging over the water. We can't cut brush off the banks. We can't move logs around or anything disturb the stream bottom, but we can cut the brush back, and that allows more sunlight to penetrate, which grows more aquatic plants, which grows more bugs, which feeds more fish, increases our fish populations. These are small streams anyways, so they're not going to have gigantic fish populations. It's not like
Right.
the driftless. It's too much winter up here.
Okay.
So we're never going to get, 2 or 3,000 fish per mile out of these streams, but we do get larger fish. We got one stream that we're getting 13 to 15-inch brookies out of. Not all of them are
That's
that
nice.
big, of course, but when you take a stream that's only 10 or 12 feet wide and it's only 3.5 miles long, and you can do that with natural reproduction, it hasn't been
That's
stocked
nice.
in 50 years.
That's great. What a resource.
Yeah, it's really, really great stuff. So we're slowly building our areas of brushing, and we don't want to brush the entire stream. We just want to brush some places, give the fish some solitude, some rest. If you're good enough to fish in those places, go for it. They're there, But other places where the stream's a little wider and a little easier for other people to cast, and there's been some habitat restoration work that's been done on them, we feel really good about being able to open up that water for angler access as well as for making sure that the stream stays healthy.
Do you have some mining issues up there? Some
We
issues with
don't
mining?
where we're at. Up here on top of the hill, we don't have the mining issues, but we have mining issues close to us, but they're downhill. At Boulder Junction, where I'm sitting right here, right now, is 1,000 feet above Lake Superior.
Yeah.
So the mining occurs between me and Lake Superior. It's not going to affect any of my local water,
Okay.
but regionally, we are, we're always keeping our eyes open and urging state resource agencies and state legislatures to do the right thing, to not let those mining interests
Keep
get
them
in
away.
and ruin all those fisheries.
Because there's a big mine proposal on the Menominee, isn't there? On the
There's a
Michigan
big
side?
one on the Menominee. There's another one just south of the Porkies. It's going to destroy the
Wow.
Iron River and the Porcupine Mountains.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah,
I've been there. I was there as a kid. It's
yeah,
beautiful up
it's
there.
gorgeous. It has beautiful fishing in it. It's got wild browns, brooks, and rainbows. It gets Atlantic salmon in one of the streams. It gets pinks in another one. And to see those watersheds in jeopardy just scares
Uh,
me.
you could just get lost in a good way up there, couldn't you? Starting where you are,
Oh
just
yeah,
work your
there's
way
there's
all up.
places that I uh, I usually don't take people fishing unless they're young enough there.
Ah,
I'm 68, but I'm in pretty good shape yet.
good for you.
And I can climb down into a 600-foot deep canyon and get my way back out of it again. And the brook trout fishing in places like that is
It's worth it.
you can't believe it.
Yeah, it's worth it. All right. So are you from this area? How'd you end up in Boulder Junction?
I grew up on a boys and girls summer camp that my parents owned just south and east of here a little ways in Conover, small town north of Eagle River. And so I was always in the outdoors. It was on Lake Buckataben. The camp was called Camp Buckataben. Ironically, on Lake Buckataben, there are 3 spring creeks that come into it that have brook trout in them. So I could fish for bass in the warmer part of the stream, fish for anything, any warm water fish I wanted to in the lake. And then if I paddled far enough upstream, I could catch a couple of brook trout. So it was a pretty cool childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, you were hooked.
Yeah, I knew when I was 10 years old that I was always going to live here. I have
Nice.
5 other siblings, and none of them live in Wisconsin.
Oh, really? No kidding. Huh.
Everybody else has moved elsewhere for employment. And if you're going to live up here, you better bring your own job. I was in the school bus business for a number of years. I was chief of maintenance of a fairly large school bus company.
Okay.
And I did that until I stored away enough chips that I could make my own fly shop and
Good for
leave the
you.
rest of the world behind.
Yeah, good for you.
I've been fly fishing and fly tying for over 60 years.
For 60, my goodness. All right. So here you are in the middle of musky country and you open a fly shop.
Yeah,
Like, why not just a fishing store?
because I'm a fly angler. I
Okay.
owned a fly rod right after I owned a cane pole.
Okay. Good answer. I love that.
Do I know how to use those other types of equipment? Yes, I do,
Yeah.
but I don't own one.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, but already got 5 world records. I don't need one of those kinds of rods.
Yeah. Right. Right. Hey, tell me about some of your fly patterns that you've come up with.
So I've made a number of musky flies, of course. But when you grow up here, your first word is cookie, your second word is musky if you live in Boulder Junction. It's not mama and dada.
Feed me and let me fish.
Yeah, just keep me to the water. I'll be fine.
Yeah.
So I've made a number of those types of patterns. I've made a number of warm water patterns. I actually started fly fishing for warm water fish to bring attention to the sport in the 70s and 80s because it was overlooked up here. And
Yeah.
you could talk to anybody and ask them if they fly fish. And they all said, "Oh yeah, I fly fish for bluegills and crappies when they're on the beds."
Yeah.
And then I put my fly rod away and I go back to catching walleyes and whatever else they want to catch.
Right.
And because back in those days there weren't a lot of musky fanatics like there are today, so everybody had a fly rod. It's just that they didn't use the fly rod
Yeah.
all the time. They didn't think of the fly rod as a tool that they could catch any species of fish they wanted to on. When I caught a world record walleye out of Lake Minocqua, they started paying attention. When I caught a world record muskie out of one of the lakes here in town, they started paying more attention.
Yeah, I'll bet.
When I caught an 8-pound smallmouth bass, they got real excited. So
That's big.
those kinds of things are the things that I wanted to bring people's attention to, was that, hey, this is not an area of the world that you should leave alone just because you have a fly rod.
Yeah.
And then when you stack on top of that all the hundreds, maybe thousands of miles of trout water that we have intermingled around all these lakes, it's a dream come true. There's no way I could even fish all of the water that's here. I just pick on, some of the places that I've learned are better places. And at certain times of the year, those streams may not fish worth a diddly. There's my favorite brook trout stream doesn't fish well until the end of September.
Huh. Really? Migratory things? Is that what's
Yeah,
going on?
Well, those fish have moved up from farther down river where they're real dispersed, and they concentrate in an area that's perfect spawning habitat for them.
Okay. Yeah, super interesting. You created a market up there, it sounds like.
Oh, definitely, absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the only fly shop in the region. You got to
Right.
go over to Hayward or over to Green Bay in the same general latitude in order
Yeah.
to find another fly shop.
I did a show with Tim Landwehr down in
Right.
Menominee, and he's
Yeah,
kind of the same thing, right? He had to kind of carve out a niche with fly
exactly.
fishing.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think that just about everybody that has a fly shop in the northern part of the state has done the same thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting.
you gotta create. The market is there. You just gotta let people know about it.
Right. All right. I want to ask you kind of a little deeper question. I'm kind of curious, and you've been doing this a long time, and I'm wondering, what have you learned about people through all your years of running a fly shop and guiding?
Well, I'm not nearly as intense as I used to be.
Is that right? Okay.
There's times when I've had somebody out, and they catch a 16-inch smallmouth, biggest smallmouth they ever caught in their life, and they're just happier than hell. Like, oh, that's a nice little one, and toss it back, right after the grip and grin, and they're like, oh, and I'm like, well, we're not going to kill any fish to begin with. So that's I learned guiding when I was in high school, and I knew all of the old famous guides, and they all took a shine to me, and they would say, follow me today. And they got together at the coffee shop ahead of time, and they
Yeah.
decided who was going to take me that day.
Lucky you.
One of the local resorts would call up. Red Crown Lodge was owned by Standard Oil, and they would have a salesman's meeting. And they'd call up the local bait and tackle shop and they'd say, we need 60 guides for the next 3 days. So, everybody came out of the woodwork to guide. And so these old guides, they would decide who was going to drag me around that day. So I learned all of that bait fishing and so on from those guys.
Yeah.
And they were crotchety old guys, but they liked me. And but one old guy, he used to carry around a can of Planters peanuts. Didn't have peanuts in it. It was full of pea gravel. And if another guy got too close to him, he'd start throwing rocks at him. Get out of here, you SOB. Go find your own damn walleyes. And he'd start throwing rocks at him.
Whatever it takes, I guess, huh?
Yeah, but those guys taught me a lot. They taught me about the fishing. They taught me about people. They taught me how to treat the fishery. And even though they exploited the fishery to the utmost, they still managed their fisheries. They would never go back to the same spot day after day after day and fish dry. They would never do that. And so I don't either. I never fish the same stretch of water more than once a week.
Yeah.
That's my rule. That's my own personal rule. I don't care how good it's fishing. I won't go back to that same stretch day after day.
Rest it. Yeah.
Yep.
Got to rest it. So if you could go back 30 years and have a conversation, a little sit down with yourself, what would you tell yourself?
Slow down.
Really?
Yeah. Slow down. Don't go through the stream like a bull moose in rut,
Fishing wise. Okay.
fishing wise. Yeah. What else? As far as a life lesson, what would I tell myself? Oh, geez, there's a lot. I'd have to have a really long conversation.
Well, pick one thing. Less intense.
The one thing I'd say is what goes around comes around. If you're nice to people, people are nice to you.
Yeah,
If you're honest and sincere with people, they will be
Yeah.
honest and sincere with you.
yeah.
That's the number one thing. I never had to lie to anybody to tell them or to impress them that
Yeah.
that I knew what I was doing.
Right.
It pretty much speaks for itself. If you didn't have a good day with me, I'm really sorry because I tried my best.
You worked hard. So what's ahead for Bill Sherer?
Well, I know that I'm not going to be able to row a boat forever. Somebody asked me last year, what are you going to do when you retire? I said, I'm going to go fishing.
That sounds like a guide to me. That's a dyed-in-the-wool guide. "What do you do on your day off?" "I fish."
I never used to get days off, and I had to work a couple of days off in now because it's not quite as easy as it used to be.
Yeah.
It's the good thing about fishing rivers is it's all downhill.
Yeah, I guess so, especially if you're fishing wet flies downstream, right?
Yeah, you're always getting closer to the car with every stroke.
But you think fishing slower is a good idea, not
Yeah,
faster.
not
Interesting.
faster, slower. Slow down
Why slower?
because if you see 5 fish in your area,
Yeah.
there's 25.
Ah,
You want to catch 5 or do you want to catch 25?
gotcha. Don't leave fish to find fish, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah.
Now there's a certain point where, I'm fishing a spot and we've caught 8 or 10 fish out of that spot. We rested it once or twice and we caught
Uh,
1 or 2 more. I'm like, you know what? I know there's more fish here, but they know we're here too.
yeah,
So, let's take our bat and ball and go find a fresh field.
right.
And sometimes we can just, depending on the stream or the stretch of stream that we're in. Most of these big freestoners that are up here, all have really long riffles, a mile long riffle.
Oh, really? Cool.
And I mean, if you want to try to fish a mile of riffle in a day, good luck. You know,
Yeah,
you're skipping over way too many fish.
sure. Nymphing
Because
water.
that takes a whole lot of patience and casts, and I'm a really great trout fisherman, and when he came to me, he didn't even know how to cast. He's retired. He has a house up here now. He can go, but he likes to go with me because he doesn't have to guess where the fish are then. But
Right.
but I mean, if we fish 300 yards in a day, that's going to be a long day for him, and he'll catch 30, 40 fish, maybe 50 in that place.
He
There's
does a good
one
job.
stream in the UP that if you can't catch 100 brook trout a day, you're doing something wrong.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
And he likes to fish dry flies, and we'll fish dries when the conditions are right for dries and there's rising fish. But he's also learned the wet fly way, like I learned it from my
You
grandpa.
taught him well. Is that right? From your
Yeah,
grandpa? Oh, no kidding.
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So and his biggest fish that he's caught, he got a 21-inch brookie with me, and that fish was on a wet fly.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah, man, that's a great fish. Brookies get really wide in the shoulder too, don't they? When they
Yeah,
get,
they do. They get real
you know,
broad. Yeah,
just thick, big guys. So, Bill, you also have a pontoon raft business. Can you tell us about that?
sure. So Northwoods Inflatables is my pontoon raft company. I've got 4 or 5 different models of pontoon rafts, everything from 1 man to a 3 man raft. They're silent, they're durable, they're easy to handle, they're light enough weight that 2 people can move them from the car to the river
Very
without
good.
any problem. I build wheels for them so you can take them down through the logging roads that are left over, dotted out throughout the area. The pontoon rafts are, as far as I'm concerned, the way to go
Huh.
because the fish don't know you're there. You can get right up on top of them. They see logs floating down the river all the time, so when a pontoon comes over the top of them, they don't get excited about it.
Huh. Fascinating. And are your feet, is it like a raft where your feet are on the bottom if you want them to be, or?
So in my rafts, I make them 2 different ways. I make them with a solid floor, and it's about 50-50. Some people want a full floor
Yeah.
all the way through the entire raft. In others, the angler has a solid floor. And the pilot, the guy who's rowing, he has his feet open to the water
Oh, he does.
so
Okay.
that he can stop the raft where he wants to. I can walk my rafts through a big rapids on the Wisconsin River.
Yeah. You don't have to jump out.
Flambeau.
You just walk
Yeah.
it through.
So even if you're in a drift boat, you can't walk it through there and let your anglers take all the shots they want. They're only going to get a certain number of shots. If you're in a canoe or a kayak,
Yeah.
any other kind of hard bottom boat, you can't slow it down and let everybody take all the shots they want. So I can do that with the raft.
That's
I
super
can
cool.
put my feet down and I can walk it right through. So I really prefer the raft without the full floor, but I'm
Yeah.
not vertically challenged. So
Yeah, you stick out at 6'6",
yeah,
I'm sure.
it makes it a little easier for me. If I was 5'8", I might have a different point of view.
Yeah. Yeah, you can reach all those holes.
But yeah, the rafts are real reasonably priced because I don't have a middleman. I deal directly with the manufacturer of the pontoons, some of the finest pontoons in the world. They're used on whitewater rafts throughout the planet
Okay.
without any problems. So we can fish out of them. They're extremely durable.
So you got a website?
Yeah, you can find them on my Facebook page, Northwoods Inflatables.
Okay.
And if you just Google "We Tie It," you'll get my Facebook page or my website, and it's got all the information on them there too.
Okay. And so if people want to come and book a trip with you, go fly fishing, they just Google We Tie It Fly Shop and they can find you that way?
Yep, they'll find my information. I'm not hard to find. I've been around a long time.
Okay. And what about Instagram, Facebook?
I have Facebook. I don't have any Instagram.
Okay, you're on
I'm
Facebook.
just on Facebook. That's it.
Under We
Under
Tie It?
yeah, you can find me under Bill Sherer, or you can
Okay.
find me under We Tie It, or you can find me under Northwoods Inflatables or Muskies on the Fly.
Okay. Very good. You're busy on Facebook. All right, couple last questions. What's your favorite shore lunch? Do you do shore lunches when you take
I
clients out?
don't do shore lunch.
Oh, you
No,
don't?
no, no.
Okay. You bring
I
your
have
own?
so many clients that don't want to stop. They want to take 10 minutes to eat and get right back at it again. I take more time than that.
Well, you just take some sandwiches?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I got a cooler, a big Yeti. We put everything in the cooler.
Okay.
We'll fish to a certain spot, walk back to the car, and then from the car we'll fish the
Okay.
other direction, whichever way we went, up or down.
I
And
got you.
it all kind of depends. There's a few places where I might walk in for 20 minutes or so to get to a spot. And in that case, we'll take a couple of energy bars and a couple of drinks and throw them over our shoulder.
Hardcore, man.
Yeah,
That's hardcore. Go all day.
yeah.
What's your favorite spot at the end of a day for a hungry, thirsty angler?
We have so many great restaurants up here. I have a couple of medical conditions that I can't sit down at a restaurant and eat very well. But I don't care which restaurant you pick in Boulder Junction, it's going to be a great restaurant with a chef, not just a cook.
Oh, really? No
Yeah.
kidding. Sounds like a foodie town.
It is a very foodie town, and we're
Yeah.
getting a brewery. We'll have a brewery in by the end of the summer.
There you go.
Not just a place that's a beer pub, but a real true brewery.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah, we've got two other new restaurants that are being built right now that'll be ready this summer sometime. So yeah, but we're regionally, as long as you stay on the Wisconsin side around in Vilas County, you're going to be fine. I don't care if you go to Eagle River, Land O'Lakes, Boulder, Manitowish Waters, Minocqua, Woodruff, you're going to find some really good restaurants.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's a tourist area, isn't it?
Right. But
Yeah.
if you get over into Forest County or you get up into the UP, you better bring your own.
Oh, is that right? Okay. Now, are there tons of places to stay? Lodges, cabins, Airbnbs?
Oh
that kind
yeah,
of thing?
we've got campgrounds, we've got full service campgrounds, we've got hotels, there's BROPs, there's resorts, there's any kind of accommodation that you can think of, it's available here.
That sounds great. That sounds
If
great.
you want to do with a wilderness thing, we've got the Sylvania Recreation Area is only 25 minutes from town, and that's 29,000 acres of wilderness.
Really? Wow.
It's a miniature Boundary Waters, more or less.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah.
And it's been no kill bass fishing since 1971.
No kidding.
So yeah, if you're looking for a giant smallmouth bass, you're not going to find many places better.
That's a good spot.
Yeah.
Man. Bill, thanks for being on the show. It was great talking to you.
Oh, my pleasure. We could keep talking all day.
I know it. It's I just love talk fishing, especially with guys who've been doing it for 60 years. That's pretty cool. And Folks, thank you all for listening. Bill, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to follow. And we'll be sure to post Bill's contact information on the Destination Angler show notes. And we'll get you some exclusive pictures of the scenery up there, maybe some people holding some nice fish and his top fly picks and some of those local ties we've been talking about. We'll put those out on Facebook and Instagram. As always, you can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shag50@gmail.com. If you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.